So when I'm giving a golfer a lesson in person, there's usually a couple questions I'll ask them right at the beginning of the lesson. Number one is, what do you think is wrong with your swing? And number two, what did you work with the last teacher that you had a lesson with? And usually in both cases, the answers will be stuff that just really doesn't matter at all. And I'm always amazed at how many styles of swings there are that made the Hall of Fame. You go anywhere from a perfect Ferris wheel in Colin Montgomery to extremely low and flat around like a Ben Hogan, from a crazy inside takeaway like Ray Floyd to a crazy outside takeaway like Matthew Wolff. So there's literally hundreds of variations of golf swings or different moves within the golf swing that have all done what I call make $1 million in a year. That's always the answer to questions when people ask me if it's okay, if it's bad if I do this or good if I do that. I say, has someone made $1 million in a year playing golf doing it that way? And the answer is almost always yes. This is why I'd like to see you focus more of your attention on this 9-inch space. No, not between your ears like some people say, but this 9-inch space through the impact zone and controlling what happens as you pass through the golf ball. That's what really matters. Let's check it out. Now, the first milestone for novice golfers out there is to consistently be able to break 100. And the skill you need through the impact zone to do that virtually every time is to control the low point. And so if you're already hitting the ball flush in the air every time and you've got no problem making divots in the right place, then it's okay, skip ahead to the next chapter. But if you're hitting behind the ball a lot, chunking it, or even what some golfers do is they're constantly hitting the ball thin because their low point is too far behind the ball and they're catching the ball in the equator on the ascent. Well, then you should stay here and watch this part of the lesson. Now, what you're trying to do is develop a low point that's right off your left instep with every club in your bag, and therefore you're going to control your angle of attack and your divot location and the correct strike by the ball position. So I've got this as an example. The orange stick is going to represent my low point. Now notice with an 8-iron here, the low point is about 4 inches in front of the ball. This is where the pros on TV will reach the bottom of their arc this far in front of it. That's the deepest part of their divot. A divot is about 6 inches in length. It's about the size of a dollar bill. And so if you watch this in super slow motion, you can see that an iron gets deflected down into the ground and will enter the grass for the first time, about an inch in front of the ball. And then it continues to go deeper till it reaches the 4-inch mark. Then it's in the divot still, but it's starting to come out of the divot now and then on its way around. By this time, the ball is long gone. Now, this ball would be for a 6-iron, so I will still bottom out in the same place, right off the left instep, but I'm going to move the ball about an inch further forward, and therefore it'll be a slightly shallower angle of attack. And here would be a 4-iron. A 4-iron is not meant to carve deep, but more to sweep. And so I've got it even closer. Your hybrids and your 3-woods would be up very close, if not just behind where you want the low point to be, because they're like water skis underneath. They're built to skim across the turf rather than dig into it. And of course, you've got your driver actually in front of the orange stick. The same swing with control of the low point in the same place now takes advantage of that ball sitting on a tee and can turn upwards at the last minute. So reaches the low point here, and the last 3 or 4 inches turns upwards into the ball for the best possible distance. So if you're going to break 100 all the time, you've got to learn this skill. And the best way to do it is by thinking of this, that you've got to get the effort out of the arms, less powerful feeling arms, and you've got to turn up the volume on both the shift of weight over on top of the outside of the left foot and the rotation of the chest, all prior to impact. Those are the two things that are going to help your divot move forward in front of the ball. And an 8-iron would be maybe 3 or even 4 inches in front of the ball. You will strike your low point, which means you're striking the ball first. The ball takes off before your club ever even enters the grass, which happens about an inch or so later, and then you carve right through your low point and out. But that time the ball was already out of the picture. So what would that look like? Well, the best possible drill you can do. There's some good gadgets out there, but the best thing you can do is just go out. You can have an old piece of carpet or maybe an old driving range mat that you've bought. And what you're trying to do is you can put a ball about in the right spot and you just practice. Start really small and just practice shifting and turning out in front of the arms and the club. Raise the energy in the lower body's movement and the chest's movement, and lower the amount of energy, or turn the speaker down from the shoulders down to the fingertips, and get kind of lazy and make the arms start to be responsive. So start really small and just start making ground contact at or in front of the stick like this, just over and over and over again. You want to start this really small, master it on a small scale first. You'll start to feel how the body needs to heave almost to cause the change of direction in the club. And so most golfers who are hitting it fat, the arms and the wrists are starting the downswing by doing this, kind of an absent or a very late body. But you got to get this engine out in front pulling the caboose, which is this end. Small scale, make divots at or in front of the stick. And then if you're on the range, you might try to do the same thing. And there I've got a divot clearly in front of the ball and a very nice compressed strike. But the second thing you're going to need if you're going to break 90 consistently is now you're also going to need to be able to square the club face and control the angle of the face within reason. Now, since the club face angle represents 75, 80, or even more than 80% of the influence on what direction the ball is going to go in, it means you need to have control over the club face within a reasonable amount of degrees, which is very small. It's actually like 2, 3, 4 degrees plus or minus if you're going to keep that ball in play. So I think this angle is the best to take a look at what the club face ideally would be doing in a swing. And that would be coming around an arc from the inside, but the face of the club is square to the arc the whole way, hits the ball dead square, and then exits continuing around the arc with the club face staying square to that arc. That is the best way, the most ideal way to do it, but you won't have to be this perfect at it in order to control the face enough to break 90 all the time. So here's a couple keys to help you control the club face. First of all, most golfers out there miss the longer clubs off to the right. So obviously, remember that the face angle is mostly in control of that. Therefore, the face of the club at impact must be open. So the more open it is, the further off to the right the ball is going to end up. So most of you out there who leave the face open a lot and push or slice the ball, you're generally not putting enough active force into the swing, into the downswing with your wrists and forearms. So if I were to just to pull on the arms and keep the wrists therefore kind of cocked and squeeze a lot, I can leave the face open. Or if I'm just very passive with the wrists and arms, I will leave the club face open. Passive hands are a myth. It's been shown conclusively that if we didn't use any active force with their hands and arms into the club's grip, that we'd leave the club face open something like 30 degrees. And the ball would go off the planet. It would go so far to the right. So you've got to put at least enough squaring force into the downswing by snapping the wrists and rolling the forearms like this. That has to be active. There's got to be active hands long before you've struck the ball in order to cause the club head to catch up to the hands on the left arm and square that face up. Now, another common pattern that causes people to have little control over the club face is when the club face goes severely open to closed. Now, this timing can still be used to break 90 all the time if you practice a lot and you have good tempo. So what I would recommend you do if you do employ a open to close strategy like this, it's not ideal, but you can control it if your swing stays nicely in smooth and even rhythm. Now, if you really want to get good at controlling the face, so that as you get better and you start to add the next parts of this lesson into your swing, you're going to need pretty tight control over the club face. So you need to get closer and closer to that square to the arc pattern that I described as ideal. And to do that, you're going to have to start focusing in on what the handle of the club is doing. The handle of the club has also got to be arcing around you from in to out and then cracking back around the arc again just before the club head responds to that and turns around its own arc. This involves stuff that we have to go over in another video because it now involves body positioning and arms and swing plane. Now you want to bring it down, let's say under 85 all the time. We're going to need to start concentrating on skill number 3 in order of importance, and that is going to be where you strike the ball on the face. So now, of course, with modern clubs, you don't have to hit it quite as dead center as you did, let's say, back in the 70s or 80s. You have a little bit more margin of error with these oversized clubs and moving the weight around. You can hit the ball pretty decent distance, missing anywhere out, even out to 3/4 of an inch off the dead center. The ball will still fly pretty good. Now, how are you going to hit the ball in the sweet spot more often? Well, unfortunately, there's no easy answer because the number one thing that's going to affect that is how much practice. Repetition is going to breed consistency when it comes to hitting the ball closer to the face. But you do want to learn to be aware of where you're hitting the ball on the face. So there's a lot of golfers that have no idea which part of the club face they hit when they don't hit the center. It's easy to recognize the center because it feels really sweet. But this is why I've got this Athlete's Foot powder spray. You'll spray some of this on the face and it's going to reveal where exactly on the club face you strike the ball. Use this if you're not sure on where you strike the ball. Maybe there is a pattern, maybe it's random chaos, but you need to identify this and start to learn what it feels like to hit low in the heel, high in the toe, low in the center, high in the center. They all have different feels and they all have different ball flights. Now, the fourth most important skill, which you should really only move on to being worried about once you get pretty good at the first 3, but this is what might even get you to consistently break 80 when you start adding this, and that's the path of the club head. So you have the angle of the face as your second most important aspect in the impact zone of being a good golfer, not all this other superfluous stuff, the takeaway and the top of the backswing. They matter only a little. What really matters is right here. So path is now number 4 most important. This is only representing 20 to 25% of the influence on where the ball's going to go. But while you do have a much larger margin of error than with the club face, you still have to keep this within reason in order to be a pretty good golfer. So the ideal would look like this. The club would come on an arc from the inside. Remember, the swing is a circle. It's arcs and circles. There's only one line in golf, and that's the line, the straight line you want your ball to travel down towards the flag, coming in from an angle. And right as it strikes the ball, at that split second, it's moving right at your intended target. And then, in a perfect world, your path would then go back to the inside again because it is traveling around a arc. Now, yes, it's true, poorer golfers tend to swing more outside in, but if it's only a few degrees, it's not a problem. When you're trying to just break 80, your club path just needs to be within -4 or 5 or even 6 degrees of dead straight. And that's quite a great margin of error. So even if you're swinging somewhat outside in, now if I can control the club face and the low point, yeah, sure, I'll play a bit of a slice, but at least I'll hit it clean up in the air and I will be able to control the direction. Now, another great error that a lot of golfers make is the intention of making the club swing inside to out. Now inside out can often leave you hitting the ball at impact too far from the inside. And see a shot like that where I just hit kind of a duck hook straight into the ground. The other thing I could do is I could just push the ball and it may not come back far enough. So I'm going from a push to too much curve because my path has strayed too far from neutral, like 8, 10, 12 degrees inside out. If you are one of those people, you're going to have a big time issue with controlling the direction of your shots. It'll be really hard to break 80 consistently. Now, the fifth most important detail through the impact zone in order to shoot lower scores, hit the ball long and straight, is speed. And how much clubhead speed you have also plays a very large part in what kind of scores you're going to shoot. Now, if you're doing the first four things pretty well, you're not going to need as much speed as you think in order to shoot some pretty good scores. But if you're going to put them all together and you'd like to break 75, let's say today, then you're going to need to probably attain a much higher clubhead speed. Now, the simplest and best thing you can do to get more clubhead speed is just to practice swinging fast. Lots of repetitions without a ball, some repetitions with a ball. Now, training aids can be very effective. Here I've got a light whippy stick called the Speed Whoosh, and I've got my swing radar. And so if I want more speed, I want to start practicing to swing faster and faster, I will get rid of the golf ball and I'll just swing this whippy stick and I'll just concentrate on making a nice long backswing, long follow through with loose hands and a very fast, forceful snap at the bottom. And I'm just simply looking at that radar and I'm trying to make a high score, something like this. Just like that. And I'm just trying to go all out. The faster you can swing compared to your normal comfort zone, the faster you're going to raise that comfort zone. So snap the hands, make the club head swoosh, use a radar. There's a lot of different tools you can use. I like the ripstick system the best. I will leave a link to that device down in the description. Now, how much speed do you need to shoot the score that you would like to shoot? Well, if you wanted to break 90 some of the time, I would recommend that you have at least 80 miles per hour. This would enable you to hit a good drive around 210 yards, with your average being maybe 180 to 190. Now, if you are reasonably controlling the other factors like the low point and the clubface angle, you should have no problem hitting the ball 180, 190, 200, 210 at your best. Should easily be enough to break 90 most of the time. So now once you're able to control these 5 elements of the impact zone, you're guaranteed to play some really good golf, despite whether your grip's a little bit off, your stance is a little bit off, your takeaway isn't dead on plane at the top of the swing, you're a little bit in a funny position, maybe you're not even that in balance on your follow through. It doesn't really matter that much, because remember, in the Hall of Fame there's so many variations that all worked because all of those golfers were so good through the impact zone, starting with number 1 all the way up to number 5. So if you want to hit it longer and straighter and shoot better scores, just be a better golfer in general. Be more consistent. Focus more on this rather than all the superfluous things that happen outside the impact zone. Start with number 1 if you're not very good at it, and work your way through that list until finally, if you're pretty good at all 5, there's not going to be any stopping you. Hey, thanks so much for watching all the way through to the end. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Hit the like button if you did. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Check out my website, hititlonger.com, because we know that YouTube videos alone are not going to help you get all the way to where you want to be. So there you're going to find several options for personalized coaching, including live one-on-one private instruction, and I would love to help you improve your swing. Now, if I don't see you in the next video, I hope I see you longer and straighter down the fairway. Everybody take good care.